In the dim light of a Berlin morning in 1895, Richard Sorge was born into a Germany on the brink of monumental change. The country was industrializing at an unprecedented pace, the streets thrumming with the energy of factories, and the air thick with the scent of coal and ambition. From an early age, Sorge's life was shaped by contrasts, a city of modern innovation set against the shadow of historical tradition, the tension between intellectual curiosity and rigid societal expectation. Sorge's family, though not wealthy, belonged to the educated middle class. His father, a German engineer, and his mother, of Russian descent, instilled in him a dual appreciation for German precision and Russian introspection. This bicultural heritage would later provide him with an uncanny ability to navigate both worlds, a trait that proved invaluable for a man destined to operate in the hidden corridors of espionage. By the time he reached adolescence, Sorge had demonstrated a sharp intellect, an interest in literature and politics, and a fascination with the interplay of power and ideology. The tumult of the post-World War I era further shaped young Richard. Germany, reeling from defeat and burdened by the Treaty of Versailles, became a crucible for political radicalism. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and the rise of extremist movements created an environment where ideas were as dangerous as bullets. Sorge, observing this upheaval, began to understand the delicate balance between appearance and reality, between public rhetoric and private intention. He saw how ideology could be both a mask and a weapon, a lesson he would carry into his adult life. By the early 1920s, Sorge had ventured beyond Germany, spending time in the Soviet Union, where he became increasingly aware of the ideological and strategic stakes of international politics. His interactions with communist operatives, combined with his journalistic work, honed his skills in observation, analysis, and deception. He learned to blend into environments where suspicion could mean death, and he developed a meticulous attention to detail that would define his espionage career. In 1933, as Adolf Hitler rose to power, Sorge returned to Europe, fully aware that the continent was moving toward chaos. The Nazi regime's consolidation of authority, the suppression of dissent, and the aggressive foreign policy signaling Germany's expansionist ambitions made it clear that war was not a question of if, but when. Sorge, aligned with Soviet intelligence, recognized that information would be the most potent weapon in the coming conflict. His mission became both urgent and perilous: to infiltrate the heart of Germany's allies and report every strategic decision that could alter the fate of nations. By 1933, Sorge's assignment to Japan began to take shape. Tokyo, far from the European epicenter, offered both opportunity and challenge. As a correspondent for a German newspaper, he had legitimate reasons to be there, giving him a credible cover. Yet the city was a hotbed of political intrigue. Militarists, diplomats, spies, and journalists all intersected in a delicate dance of information and deception. Sorge quickly established himself among foreign correspondents, gaining access to high-ranking officials and the inner workings of Japan's military and diplomatic circles. Sorge's approach to espionage was methodical. He did not rely solely on charm or luck. Every contact, every conversation, every observation was meticulously documented and transmitted with precision. He cultivated informants across ideological divides: Japanese officers, German expatriates, and even Soviet sympathizers, creating a network that allowed him to see patterns others overlooked. By blending professional journalism with clandestine intelligence gathering, Sorge perfected the art of living a double life, where every word spoken and every gesture made could carry weighty consequences. The late 1930s were pivotal. Europe's political landscape was shifting rapidly. Hitler's Germany was rearming, forging alliances, and sending subtle but unmistakable signals of impending aggression. Sorge's reports became increasingly critical. He noted the movement of troops, the rhetoric in official communiques, and the clandestine agreements being forged behind closed doors. Each dispatch to Moscow contained information that could change the course of strategy, potentially giving the Soviet Union the foresight to prepare for the storm gathering in Europe and Asia. In Tokyo, Sorge cultivated a persona that masked his true allegiance. He was the charming, erudite journalist, fluent in German, Russian, and Japanese, moving seamlessly through diplomatic receptions and military briefings. Yet beneath this facade, he lived in constant awareness of the peril surrounding him. Every meeting could be monitored, every message intercepted. Sorge's daily existence balanced on the knife edge between exposure and invisibility, between life and execution. By the spring of 1939, Richard Sorge had firmly established himself in Tokyo. His cover as a German correspondent for a prominent newspaper granted him credibility. Yet beneath this facade lay a sophisticated network of espionage. Sorge understood that intelligence was only as valuable as its sources and connections, and he meticulously cultivated contacts among Japanese officials, German expatriates, and local sympathizers. Sorge's first priority was access. He attended social gatherings, military briefings, and diplomatic receptions, always observing, listening, and memorizing. Every word, gesture, and subtle expression could reveal intentions, alliances, or vulnerabilities. In a city where appearances were everything and loyalty was closely scrutinized, Sorge's ability to blend in allowed him to navigate circles that would otherwise have been closed to a foreign journalist. Among his earliest allies was Hotsumi Ozaki, a Japanese journalist and political advisor with deep connections to the government. Their relationship was based on mutual respect, secrecy, and shared ideological understanding. Ozaki provided Sorge with insights into Japanese military planning, political maneuverings, and the intricacies of imperial bureaucracy. Through this partnership, Sorge could verify the reliability of his information before transmitting it to Moscow. Sorge's work was methodical. He kept detailed notes on troop movements, military exercises, and the strategic priorities of Japan. He also maintained surveillance on German officials in Tokyo, observing communications between the embassy, military attachés, and the press. Sorge's dispatches were encrypted, carefully coded, and often sent via multiple channels to minimize the risk of interception. Each report was a testament to his discipline and foresight, as any error could cost him his life. At the same time, Europe's political landscape was deteriorating. Hitler's expansionist policies, the remilitarization of the Rhineland, and the aggressive annexation of Austria and Czechoslovakia signaled that Germany's ambitions were unstoppable. Sorge followed these developments with acute attention. He knew that intelligence from Tokyo alone was insufficient. Understanding German strategic intentions required a global perspective. His reports combined observations from Asia with analyses of European affairs, providing Moscow with an unparalleled understanding of Axis strategy. One of Sorge's most remarkable achievements during this period was the cultivation of a German diplomat, Major Joseph Albert Meisinger, who unwittingly revealed insights about German-Japanese relations. Sorge extracted details about military cooperation, strategic planning, and diplomatic priorities. The value of such information was immense, allowing the Soviet Union to anticipate potential alliances and prepare defensive measures accordingly. The fall of 1939 brought a surge in activity. Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, marking the beginning of World War II. Sorge's reports became even more critical, detailing German military movements and intentions. He meticulously tracked the political and military reactions of Japan, analyzing whether Tokyo might coordinate with Berlin in the emerging global conflict. His intelligence suggested that while Japan had regional ambitions in Asia, it was unlikely to join Germany in an immediate attack against the Soviet Union, information that would later prove decisive. Maintaining secrecy in Tokyo was increasingly perilous. Japanese authorities monitored foreigners closely, and Sorge had to avoid even the slightest suspicion. His dual life demanded constant vigilance. A casual remark in a social setting could expose him. An intercepted message could compromise his network. Despite the risks, Sorge continued to expand his connections, recruiting new sources and building a resilient system of intelligence gathering. His reports were not merely factual, they contained analyses and predictions. Sorge anticipated German strategic moves, Japanese policy shifts, and the broader trajectory of the war. His insights allowed Soviet planners to allocate resources, adjust military positioning, and prepare for contingencies. In essence, Sorge's work in Tokyo became a silent yet powerful force shaping the early course of the conflict. Amidst this high-stakes espionage, Sorge's personal life remained minimal. There were no luxuries, no indulgences, only the constant tension of survival and the imperative to gather and transmit intelligence. The psychological toll was immense, yet Sorge exhibited remarkable composure. He understood that patience, observation, and precision were the true weapons of a spy. His ability to remain calm under pressure, to mask fear and uncertainty, and to navigate treacherous social landscapes was extraordinary. As winter approached, Sorge's network was operating at full capacity. Hatsumi Ozaki continued to provide critical insight into Japanese politics, while other informants across Tokyo, both German and Japanese, fed him information. Sorge's understanding of the balance of power in the Pacific and Europe allowed Moscow to interpret events with clarity that no other intelligence network possessed at the time. During these months, Sorge also recognized the limitations of his work. Intelligence alone could not dictate policy. It could only inform decisions. Understanding the motives, ambitions, and ideologies of leaders was crucial. Sorge's unique perspective, born from his bicultural upbringing, linguistic skills, and analytical mind, enabled him to see patterns that others missed. He could discern the hidden intentions behind public statements, anticipate strategic moves, and evaluate the reliability of sources with exceptional accuracy. By the end of 1939, Sorge had become indispensable to Soviet intelligence. His information had already influenced decisions in Moscow regarding troop placements, defensive preparations, and diplomatic engagements. The invasion of Poland, combined with Sorge's reports from Tokyo, underscored the interconnectedness of global events and the vital role of intelligence in shaping the trajectory of history. Despite the ever-present danger, Sorge maintained his composure. He knew that any misstep could lead to arrest, interrogation, or execution. Yet he remained committed to his mission, fully aware that his work could save millions of lives by providing foresight into the actions of Axis powers. His dedication, courage, and meticulous approach would define his legacy as one of the most effective spies of the 20th century. By early 1940, the world was plunged into a conflict that seemed unstoppable. Germany had swiftly overrun Poland, and France and Britain were bracing themselves for the unfolding storm. In Tokyo, Richard Sorge's network was more active than ever, and the information he transmitted to Moscow had begun to carry life-and-death implications for millions. Sorge understood that the accuracy and timing of his intelligence were paramount. A single error could alter the course of battles, or worse, cost him his life. Sorge's method was precise. Each piece of intelligence was carefully collected, verified, and encrypted before being transmitted. He maintained a strict schedule of communication with Soviet intelligence, using covert channels and sophisticated codes to avoid detection by Japanese authorities. His reports covered a wide array of topics: German strategic intentions, the timing of potential attacks, Japanese political maneuvering, and the likelihood of Tokyo joining forces with Berlin. One of Sorge's most significant contributions during this period was his analysis of Japanese intentions regarding the Soviet Union. Through Hotsumi Ozaki and other trusted informants, Sorge pieced together evidence that Japan was unlikely to launch an immediate attack against Soviet territories in Siberia. This insight was invaluable to Moscow, allowing the Red Army to reallocate forces from the Eastern Front to prepare for the looming threat in Europe. Sorge's intelligence essentially provided the Soviet Union with a window of opportunity to fortify its Western defenses, a strategic advantage that would prove critical in the years to come. Sorge's network also provided information about German-Japanese communications and alliances. By observing the interactions of German diplomats in Tokyo, monitoring radio transmissions, and analyzing Japanese military planning, Sorge identified key patterns that revealed the coordination efforts of the Axis powers. His reports included not only factual data, but also sophisticated assessments of leadership intentions, morale, and the likely outcomes of proposed military actions. The stakes of Sorge's work could not be overstated. Each transmission carried immense risk. Japanese intelligence and police were vigilant, and foreigners were constantly monitored. Sorge had to maintain a flawless cover while ensuring that his messages reached Moscow without interception. The challenge was compounded by the fact that even minor deviations from normal behavior could raise suspicion, potentially unraveling years of careful preparation. By early 1940, the world was plunged into a conflict that seemed unstoppable. Germany had swiftly overrun Poland, and France and Britain were bracing themselves for the unfolding storm. In Tokyo, Richard Sorge's network was more active than ever, and the information he transmitted to Moscow had begun to carry life-and-death implications for millions. Sorge understood that the accuracy and timing of his intelligence were paramount. A single error could alter the course of battles, or worse, cost him his life. Sorge's method was precise. Each piece of intelligence was carefully collected, verified, and encrypted before being transmitted. He maintained a strict schedule of communication with Soviet intelligence, using covert channels and sophisticated codes to avoid detection by Japanese authorities. His reports covered a wide array of topics: German strategic intentions, the timing of potential attacks, Japanese political maneuvering, and the likelihood of Tokyo joining forces with Berlin. One of Sorge's most significant contributions during this period was his analysis of Japanese intentions regarding the Soviet Union. Through Hotsumi Ozaki and other trusted informants, Sorge pieced together evidence that Japan was unlikely to launch an immediate attack against Soviet territories in Siberia. This insight was invaluable to Moscow, allowing the Red Army to reallocate forces from the Eastern Front to prepare for the looming threat in Europe. Sorge's intelligence essentially provided the Soviet Union with a window of opportunity to fortify its Western defenses, a strategic advantage that would prove critical in the years to come. Sorge's network also provided information about German-Japanese communications and alliances. By observing the interactions of German diplomats in Tokyo, monitoring radio transmissions, and analyzing Japanese military planning, Sorge identified key patterns that revealed the coordination efforts of the Axis powers. His reports included not only factual data, but also sophisticated assessments of leadership intentions, morale, and the likely outcomes of proposed military actions. The stakes of Sorge's work could not be overstated. Each transmission carried immense risk. Japanese intelligence and police were vigilant, and foreigners were constantly monitored. Sorge had to maintain a flawless cover while ensuring that his messages reached Moscow without interception. The challenge was compounded by the fact that even minor deviations from normal behavior could raise suspicion, potentially unraveling years of careful preparation. Despite the danger, Sorge's operations were remarkably successful. His network expanded to include diplomats, journalists, and military officers, all of whom provided critical insights into the unfolding conflict. Sorge's ability to synthesize this information, cross-reference sources, and present accurate predictions to Soviet intelligence earned him recognition as one of the most valuable agents operating in the Far East. Sorge's reports began to influence strategic decisions in Moscow. Soviet planners, armed with intelligence about Germany's plans in Europe and Japan's intentions in Asia, could make informed choices about troop deployments, fortifications, and diplomatic initiatives. In particular, Sorge's confirmation that Japan would not immediately attack the Soviet Union allowed Moscow to concentrate resources against the German threat, an advantage that would later prove decisive during the Battle of Moscow. The psychological strain of Sorge's work was immense. Living a double life required constant vigilance and self-discipline. Every social interaction, every encounter, and every movement had to be carefully calculated. Sorge's charm, intelligence, and linguistic skill allowed him to navigate Tokyo's elite circles. But he was always aware that a single mistake could expose him to arrest, interrogation, or execution. Yet he thrived under this pressure, demonstrating remarkable resilience and focus. As 1940 progressed, Sorge's intelligence began to reveal patterns in German military strategy that were previously unknown to Soviet planners. He provided detailed reports on troop movements, supply chains, and potential invasion routes. By analyzing these data points, Moscow could anticipate German actions and make strategic adjustments, mitigating the impact of enemy offensives. Sorge's insights into German decision-making processes, combined with his knowledge of Japanese politics, positioned him as a unique and indispensable asset in the global intelligence landscape. Sorge's work also extended to the psychological dimension of espionage. He understood that the attitudes and beliefs of leaders could influence the outcome of military campaigns. By observing interactions, interpreting rhetoric, and assessing morale, Sorge could predict the likely behavior of key figures. This ability to combine hard intelligence with psychological analysis set him apart from other agents and made his reports exceptionally valuable. The growing threat of exposure weighed heavily on Sorge. Japanese authorities were increasingly suspicious of foreign correspondents and diplomats, and counterintelligence efforts intensified. Sorge responded by enhancing his operational security. Meetings were conducted in carefully selected locations, messages were encoded with sophisticated ciphers, and informants were rotated to minimize risk. Despite these precautions, the danger remained ever present, and the margin for error was razor-thin. In late 1940, Sorge received confirmation from Moscow that his intelligence had been pivotal in guiding strategic decisions. The Red Army's redeployment from Siberia to the Western Front was in part based on his analysis, a testament to the value of his work. Yet Sorge remained cautious. He knew that recognition, while gratifying, also increased the risk of exposure. His life in Tokyo required anonymity, discipline, and the constant maintenance of his cover identity as a journalist. By the end of Part 3, Sorge had solidified his reputation as one of the most effective spies of the 20th century. His network in Tokyo was extensive, his intelligence accurate, and his impact on Soviet strategic planning profound. However, the danger surrounding him was escalating. Each report, each meeting, and each observation carried the potential for discovery. Sorge's life balanced on a precarious edge, poised between the shadows of espionage and the looming threat of capture.
By mid-1941, Richard Sorge's life in Tokyo had entered a period of extraordinary tension and high stakes. The war in Europe was escalating, and every dispatch he sent carried consequences far beyond the city streets he traversed daily. Sorge's work had moved beyond mere observation. He now engaged in daring operations that tested his skill, nerve, and the limits of trust. Sorge's network in Tokyo had grown significantly. He maintained contacts with German diplomats, Japanese military officers, and sympathetic journalists. Among them, Hotsumi Ozaki remained his closest and most reliable collaborator. Ozaki's access to the upper echelons of Japanese government provided Sorge with intelligence that was otherwise unattainable. Together, they devised methods to obtain information from sources who were cautious, politically aware, and often dangerous to approach. One of Sorge's most audacious operations involved the German embassy itself. Using his journalistic credentials, he gained access to private briefings and meetings. There, he carefully observed interactions, took mental notes, and memorized documents when possible. His ability to blend curiosity with professional interest allowed him to witness conversations that would have been off-limits to most foreigners. These intelligence-gathering sessions were fraught with risk. A single slip could alert German or Japanese authorities to his true allegiance. Sorge also relied on coded communication to transmit his findings to Moscow. He used a combination of invisible inks, microfilms, and carefully constructed ciphers. Each message was designed to withstand scrutiny. The Soviets depended on the precision and clarity of the intelligence he provided. One misstep in encryption could have been fatal, yet Sorge maintained an extraordinary level of accuracy under relentless pressure. During this period, Sorge uncovered critical intelligence regarding Japanese strategic intentions. His analysis indicated that while Japan was expanding aggressively in China and Southeast Asia, it had no immediate plans to attack the Soviet Union. This information, transmitted to Moscow, allowed the Soviet leadership to redeploy forces from the Far East to defend against the German advance in the West. The significance of this intelligence cannot be overstated. It directly influenced the Soviet Union's ability to withstand Operation Barbarossa.
Sorge's work was not limited to observation and reporting. He occasionally orchestrated minor interventions to protect his sources or facilitate the transfer of critical documents. These operations required both creativity and audacity. For example, he sometimes used social events, seemingly innocuous gatherings, to exchange information without attracting suspicion. Every movement had to be meticulously planned, balancing the need for secrecy with the urgency of delivering intelligence. As Sorge's prominence grew within his network, so did the attention from counterintelligence agencies. Japanese authorities, already wary of foreign correspondents and diplomats, intensified surveillance of all potential espionage activities. Sorge responded by increasing his operational security. He varied his routes, avoided predictable patterns, and minimized the number of people who could trace his movements. The psychological toll was immense, yet he continued with unwavering focus. In addition to his intelligence activities, Sorge had to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. Diplomats, journalists, and military officers often had conflicting interests, loyalties, and ambitions. Sorge's success depended on his ability to understand these dynamics, manipulate them subtly, and extract useful information without creating distrust. His linguistic fluency in German, Russian, and Japanese, combined with his keen insight into human behavior, allowed him to maneuver through these treacherous waters with remarkable skill. Sorge's reporting during this time included detailed analyses of troop deployments, military exercises, and diplomatic communications. He provided assessments of political motivations, leadership decisions, and strategic priorities. The Soviet Union relied on his interpretations to understand the broader trajectory of the war in both Europe and Asia. Each report was a piece of a complex puzzle, allowing Moscow to anticipate enemy actions and adjust their strategy accordingly. Despite his professional rigor, Sorge's personal life was minimal. He lived in modest accommodations, maintained few social connections beyond his network, and dedicated almost all of his energy to his espionage work. The stress of constant surveillance, combined with the moral weight of his responsibility, created an atmosphere of relentless tension. Yet Sorge thrived under these conditions, driven by a deep understanding of the stakes involved. The summer of 1941 brought new challenges. The German invasion of the Soviet Union commenced, increasing the urgency of Sorge's intelligence. Every report had the potential to influence military decisions that would determine the fate of entire populations. Sorge worked tirelessly, synthesizing information from multiple sources, analyzing patterns, and delivering intelligence with precision and reliability. His ability to operate effectively under extreme pressure solidified his reputation as one of the most skilled spies of his era. By the end of Part 4, Sorge had demonstrated not only technical mastery, but also strategic foresight. His daring operations, meticulous attention to detail, and ability to anticipate enemy actions made him indispensable to Soviet intelligence. Yet the danger surrounding him was escalating. Japanese counterintelligence was closing in, and the margin for error had become razor-thin. Every decision, every action carried the weight of life and death. Sorge's life had become a delicate balancing act, a continuous negotiation between risk and reward, secrecy and revelation.